Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me. Great to be here. Yeah, so bachelor's degree of English literature. I'm going to start with some poetry. Actually, we're going to be talking about autonomous retail. Anybody heard the term before? Show of hands. It's exciting, but yet a bit vague. So we'll talk about what autonomous retail means and what JDA is doing to power this. To get started, I've got about an hour's worth of content. We can go fast, we can go slow, we can stop for questions. This is as much of your time as it is my time. So if you do have questions, certainly let me know. I wanted to introduce the concept of autonomous retail by starting with background. So there's my background, and then there's retail background. I think it's interesting to rewind when we think about retail, so we'll do that in a second. Just so you know my background, though, we did already say it's a background with English Lit. Any liberal arts majors in the room? How many engineers? Okay, the engineers have us outmanned here. An engineer friend was joking with me once. He goes, "Hey, Eric, you know how you can get the English Lit major off your porch? Pay for the pizza." Oh, it hurt. Anyway, all my post-grad stuff was technical, learning languages, programming, development. What happened, though, is the BA got me to a publishing firm where I managed a team. And you talk about old school. There were typists, and there were proofreaders, and there was a guy running a big printer in the back room. And I kid you not, this was century-old technology. When I say technology, I mean when they had to cut something out if it was missed by the typing pool, they cut it out and pasted it onto the proof and sent it back to the, I kid you not, it came literally cut and paste was cutting and pasting. I found a PC in a back room. This was back in the 80s. I know I'm dating myself. But I realized that what we could do with word processing and disk processing and conversions of all the storage that we had in this old Wang word processor, anybody remember Wang, was really game-changing. I realized technology is here to stay. This is not a fad, and my life needs to be in technology. So that was a major inflection point for me. I started a business of my own and hired liberal arts grads. I had a history major, an art history major, another English major, and a communications major, and we all had a passion for technology, but I looked for the ability to communicate. I wanted to go out to customers and talk about what's the impact of the technology, and I literally hired with that skill set. Not only did we have a lot of fun, we solved a lot of problems, but we had very deep conversations, expanding the purposes of the world, et cetera. So I share that with you because the Wild West of computing introduced tools. And I left there, I sold the business, and I joined SAP, and I learned all about enterprise software. That's when I really started digging into retail. I saw enterprise software deployed at large companies like the one right here, and other retailers globally. And then I realized, gosh, there's a lot of value to business process automation and a lot of value to data, especially very large data when you look at something the size of Walmart. And it was eye-opening. I left SAP to go to Hortonworks. Anybody heard of Hortonworks? And Cloudera, the open source big data Hadoop system. Fascinating to see open source. So really cool stuff with that, and I applied my skills, my team's skills to building business process usage of technology, again, focusing on retail and consumer products. A lot of file streaming, again, a lot of tools that can make an impact, but retailers were having the same problems all over again. They were challenged with who's my customer? What's the right price for my product? How am I going to position all these materials to get them in the right place at the right time for the right customer at the right price? So that was illuminating as well. I left there to go to NVIDIA to do the same thing. NVIDIA called and said, hey, we're building a retail practice. Now, anybody use a GPU for gaming or for artificial intelligence? Yeah, so all of a sudden, these chips are incredibly powerful to perform massively parallel processing, right? To be able to say, if I have a process to run through and I'm running on a traditional computer that has an Intel core or an Intel chip, maybe there's 16, maybe there's 32 cores if we're lucky, how fast can I get that? Well, you're limited by that bottleneck. Putting a GPU in, there's 5,000 cores at the base level. So all of a sudden, you've got incredible parallelization that's possible. And again, I was talking to retailers saying, what are your problems? Things like recommendation logic for online e-commerce. Things like visual computing to figure out who's in the store, interpreting video streams and detecting what's a shopping cart, what's a wheelchair, what's a bicycle, who's a person, believe it or not, where's a bear? We had bears in stores in the Northwest, and that visual computing needs to detect when is it an animal, when is it a person, and what's the impact to my operations. So NVIDIA was fascinating. I share all that with you because now I'm with JDA, and I'm working with retailers to talk about enterprise systems, leveraging big data, and applying machine learning. So it really is a hat trick of technology that can have a huge impact on what we're doing. Anybody here, my colleague, Dr. Michael Feit, this morning? Incredible opportunities for machine learning. I'm going to talk more about that in my session here today. The reason I wanted you to see that is because you can also rewind retail. Where have we been with retail? And you can see on the far right where we are today, automated vehicles, proxies, what's next with commerce everywhere. But think about where we came from. Back to the old days of transactional commerce. Cash on the barrelhead. You can't buy what you can't pay for. You can't take what you haven't purchased. And if you don't pay up front, you can get shot from behind. This is the true Wild West. It was just amazing. Obviously, from there, we moved to Main Street. And I pause here because I truly think most retailers want to resurrect that Main Street experience. If you think about it, consumers knew the products. The proprietors knew the consumers. If Mrs. Cooper was coming in to get a pound of flour, he knew that she was going to get a pound of flour probably about 6 weeks later. He could start planning his replenishment algorithms, to start planning his forecasting around a very manual process. And quite frankly, people were very pleased by that. I do think retail, if you think in the grand scheme of things, wants to resurrect that Main Street experience. Very comfortable, very approachable, very trustworthy. We'll talk about blockchain. So the Main Street interest was really fascinating to think about how that drove retail. Of course, we went into malls. Incredible overdevelopment of malls in the 70s and the 80s led us into e-commerce. All of a sudden, this thing called the World Wide Web came along, and then into omni-channel, where we've got Store 999. Most retailers that I talk to still have a line item for Store 999. What do you think that represents? The internet. Right? There was a time where we were really challenged by moving that into a true multi-echelon or a true e-commerce environment, and then going into omni-channel and unified commerce to where truly right now we can buy from anywhere using a cell phone or a proxy, saying, hey Google or Alexa, order me more Tide. Right? This is all streamlined and optimized, but technology is challenging for retailers to manage. I share this with you to kind of set the stage, because what we want to do today is talk about three things. What is the technology that's impacting retailers? We'll talk through some big ticket items. What are the analysts saying are so important? And what's a retailer to do? How do we take all this incredible information, make the right decisions to build the right blend of technology to support that? So with that in mind, we'll identify a few of these drivers. Retail is transforming at pace. You can see on the right-hand side what's doing well in retail and what's not doing well in retail. Have you heard the term retail apocalypse? Show of hands, you heard this? It's a myth. For every store closing, there are 2.8 stores opening. It's a myth. We don't have an apocalypse. We simply have a transformation. We have an inflection point in retail. And what's happening is that the traditional known categories like apparel and consumer electronics and some of those mall stores, department stores, are transitioning over to discount, convenience, and dollar stores. And customers are expecting similar treatment, they're expecting similar pricing, but they're motivated to be more transactional and more spontaneous. We'll talk more about the changing dramatic dynamics of these consumers in a few minutes, but it's absolutely a thriving marketplace. Anybody who says retail is dead is not paying attention. It's not dead at all. It's thriving, just in different areas. But if we look at what is the transformational impact, technology and automation, we're all here in Northwest Arkansas talking about the Tech Summit. That's why we're here. JDA is thrilled to be a part of this environment. We see this as an evolving community, an evolving opportunity to work with technological visionaries and leaders, and it's all wrapped around that topic, technology and automation. And then, of course, personalization and customer centricity. Everything revolves around the customer. We'll talk about the market of one in a few minutes, making sure that people know we're thinking about them and marketing to them and assorting for them. And then, of course, the demographic and societal impact. We'll analyze the inflection between baby boomers into Gen X and Gen Z and millennials and the new alpha generation that started in 2017. Very young, but still they're potential buyers. So we'll talk about the demographic side, and then we'll talk about product innovation. How can we really drive the right assortment so we do have those right products in the right place at the right time? And we'll talk about other things like the competitive landscape, labor challenges, environmental challenges, and evolving omni-channel needs. With that in mind, let's pick search first. Who's searched by a picture? Anybody ever take a picture of a watch and say, show me? Right, so this is really changing the game. If you think about in the past, what do we do to find something? We have to go to a browser, fire it up, type in a piece of text, and hope the search finds what we want. Maybe we misspelled it. Maybe we can trust the browser to interpret that and do some fuzzy logic on our text. and soften it for us, but it's clunky. It's not as clean and streamlined as we'd like it to be. So visual search or shop the look is very exciting. This on the far left is a company called Boonsar, big partner with Microsoft, using image-based search, the concept of shop the look. If I see a pair of red shoes, I can take a picture of it, and it'll pose an internet search and say, show me where I can buy red shoes just like that. Same thing for a handbag or a tie or a sport coat. Talk to text or voice search. We do this every day with our GPS. Navigate me to A Street in Bentonville. Navigate me to the Embassy Suites in Rogers, right? We talk to our phones. We need to expect the same type of behavior from our enterprise systems and from our supply chain software. The alternative interface is taking off. And of course, anytime you say, hey, Google, I didn't hear any response. No Androids in the room. Or Alexa, there's a lot of opportunity to leverage that as well, so the proxy type of thing. The other point I want to make is null search results. When I was with Hortonworks, we spent a lot of time with some of the big box stores dealing with null search results. When you pose a search and they don't have what you want, they don't want to show you an empty screen. Right? You want to be able to respond with the appropriate thing, but how do they know what you're looking for? So null search results, there's a lot of logic into that. Tracking your stream, your click stream, what have you been looking at prior to this, to say, oh, you're looking for 1/4-inch clamps that fit on a PVC pipe. We don't have those, but I'm not going to tell you that. We have 3/8-inch clamp, or we have 1/2-inch clamps. And you know what? If you're looking for PVC, maybe copper. The example was home improvement, and it was really fascinating how that was effective. So null search results are driving innovation, and along with a search, this is driving technology into retail all over the world. The other one is virtual reality and augmented reality. Anybody play Pokemon Go ever? Any Pokemon Go? It's pretty cool, right? You can see the screen and you can see the embellishment on the screen. Here's an example in retail where if I have a hyper experience online, why can't I have that in person as well? If I hold my phone up against a shelf, why can't I see promotions for me, knowing who I am, or discounts that are available, coupons that are available, nutrition information when I'm looking at certain products. So augmented reality is taking off. A great example, you saw Jared yesterday from Google in the room. I don't think Jared's in here. Shout out to him. He did a great job talking about what Ulta has done. Sephora has done the same thing with a company called Modiface. Modiface has since been purchased by L'Oreal. But it's a great opportunity to say, let me take a selfie, and then if someone wants to try makeup, there's a way to try it on without applying it and wiping it off, right? I never realized when I heard how difficult it is to try on lipstick. I didn't try it, but I heard. Or the concept of a smoky eye. How do you do a smoky eye? Well, there's a pattern to follow. And this product allows you to say, okay, here's what you need to buy, and here's how you need to apply it. Really interesting and fascinating use of augmented reality, and that's Modiface. And of course, the IKEA Place app is a great way to take a picture of your living room and say, how would that look if I were to furnish that completely with furniture from IKEA? So augmented reality is here today, and it's only getting better and better. So it's very exciting to see how that is. Virtual reality, anybody tried some of the goggles? It's a bit clunky. It's going to be taking off. We're yet to decide what the experience is going to be like, but millennials are driving experiential shopping. And what I mean by that, let's take an experience. Let's take a trip, a vacation. A bunch of your friends are getting together to go skiing in Park City in February. All right, you've agreed on the dates, you've agreed on the times, you're starting to buy airplane tickets, you're starting to plan your trip. Why can't you get together in a virtual environment sponsored by the resort to do everything you need to do? Plan your wardrobe. Maybe you need some more, a scarf and a hat and some mittens and gloves. Maybe you need you're going to lease skis or buy skis or a snowboard or something like that. You can make all those transactions together in an interoperable virtual reality experience. And oh, by the way, you can buy your lift tickets and you can plan the spa day when you're not going to be on the slopes. This is an experience that's as much fun with the same people as it is to go on the trip. This concept of experiential retail is going to rapidly expand over the coming years to give people who are planning trips, it's a great example of that, to have this experiential impact. But also just experiencing what's going on with fixing something. If I have to fix a car and I open up the hood and I look inside, I don't know what the heck's going on. But if I can enrich that or go into a virtual environment and understand, oh, you have to remove this piece, go find the replacement and drop it in. These are experiential environments that are just really exciting. So these technologies are transforming the retail experience. They're started, and they're only going to get more pervasive. You've heard IoT how many times at this conference alone? Probably a dozen, if not more. IoT is everywhere. I heard somebody abbreviate it once, IOE, Internet of Everything, right? Internet of everything's got a symbol. My wife and I got a new condo a couple years ago, and we have a Wi-Fi enabled microwave. I have no idea why, but I think it's really cool. So IoT is everywhere. Things are talking. There's a fridge that can reorder juice for you when you pour your last glass. And the way it's impacting retail is that we can start to track goods movement in the store. Combining IoT, which manifests in smart shelves, smart hangers, smart bins, beacons, right? Combining that with RFID, and all of a sudden we can know when an article is pulled off the shelf and it's going back to the fitting room, who it's with, combining that with cameras in the ceiling to understand who's taking that, and that mitigates loss prevention. That enables loyalty, and that helps me build an assortment that's personalized for that consumer, right? So it's really starting to be exciting there. Last mile delivery, I did some work with Neuro, based in the Bay Area not long ago, and they're providing last mile delivery for Kroger and for Domino's in the Phoenix area. So last mile delivery is exciting. It can be a challenge because you have these little automated golf carts running their way down to the neighborhoods to deliver the last products. What's interesting, I dealt with a large grocery chain in North America who wanted to do parking lot delivery. If you have your basket ready, why can't you just walk out to your car and it would follow you? A little basket would follow you. So that's an interesting opportunity as well. Robotics in the store, in the distribution center, in the warehouse. You can see in the lower left-hand corner, this is a picture of Ocado, who is heavy in Europe and now just recently is starting to work with Kroger. Robotics are really starting to ease the warehouse optimization and make it safer for associates. And then monitoring. Anybody seen Fellow Robots or the Bossa Nova robots? I know Bossa Nova's here, they spoke yesterday. Very exciting to start look for out of stock and empty shelf situations, and comparing that with cameras in the shelves as well. So this technology is absolutely becoming more and more predominant and impacting retail in many different ways. Machine learning, deep learning, and artificial intelligence. A great way to think about this, AI is the category of optimization of intelligence. AI is intelligence. Your spam filter is AI. Your workflow is AI. AI is a very general term. Machine learning, we're getting a little bit deeper, and deep learning, we're clearly getting very deep. Deep learning is getting into neural networks, and a great example of neural networks is there was a process about 3 or 4 years ago where they were trying to identify stop signs and determining what's the best way to do that with computer vision. And could a computer vision environment actually understand a stop sign or a red light or something to that effect? So this visual optimization really took off. The challenge is when you have very similar products. If you look up there on the left-hand side, you can see golden labradoodles. Beautiful dog, looks a lot like a piece of chicken. I challenge you to run your ResNet 50 algorithm and determine what's chicken and what's a pet. Same thing for the Chihuahua puppies and the blueberry muffins. They look a heck of a lot alike. These are the levels of detail that you have to get to when you're training a neural network that's doing object recognition. What's exciting is that that's just one net, right? That's just one network. The other thing is action classification. If I reach out and I pick something up off the shelf, do I have it? Or have I dropped it? Is there a potential OSHA slip and fall situation with moisture on the floor? Or did I throw it from myself to somebody who's going to steal it, right? There's a lot of things we have to track in action classification. And then, of course, product identification. Is that a mango slice, or is that, and by the slice I mean the soda, is that a slice with mango flavoring or a slice with lemon flavoring? They look very similar, and I worked with somebody who's training a network to determine the difference between the two. Deep learning is wonderful for automated cars, for visual recognition. Deep learning is not great for what we're focusing on in supply chain. When it comes to supply chain, we want to make better decisions. Do I pump my channel full of this product, and when and why? And do I need to move 13 cases of these sweaters to my Wisconsin distribution center? The answer is probabilistic. We need to make that with a degree of satisfaction or a degree of confidence that that's the right answer, which means we have to audit that, right? The ability to audit a machine learning algorithm is critical to trusting it and encouraging humans to accept that and collaborate with that. So auditable machine learning is what we're focused on at JDA, and that's impacting forecast and replenishment, that's impacting pricing, that's impacting goods movement, and lane optimization and transportation. So this is absolutely a huge part of what we're focusing on. You can see sales pricing there for jackets, the stock projection for inventory, and in the lower left-hand corner, some of the demand curves that we're working actively on. It's an incredible opportunity to drive a much more autonomous experience. And blockchain. I didn't get a chance to hear the whole session next door, but just earlier today we were talking about how powerful blockchain is. And when you think about what blockchain represents, everybody thinks cryptocurrency. Anybody ever mine Bitcoin? Yeah, a couple of hands, great. That's where everybody thinks it's a financial transaction, but as you heard if you were in the session across the hall just recently, the value to blockchain is the integrity of the history. Being able to say, this lot of carrots came from this field in Iowa, it migrated its way through Nebraska, down to Atlanta, where it's on the store shelf. The concept of provenance. Now, I first heard the word provenance from somebody who was an antiques dealer, and I didn't realize what the impact was, but if you're buying a 15th century Louis Vuitton armoire or Louis XIII armoire, it's helpful to know where it really was. Was it built by this craftsman 500 years ago? Where did it stay? Was it in a humidity-controlled attic or not? And then where was it along the way? That concept of provenance is a great way to apply to goods as well, right? Produce. Think about the E. coli problem we had with spinach years ago. From a retail perspective, we want to make sure that if something's wrong, we keep the public's interest in mind, right? We don't want to scare anybody. If there's E. coli, it's all coming back. Don't you worry. We got it all under control. But by being able to point to the journal, to the integrity of the history and of the transactions to say, we have identified E. coli and we know exactly it's in this batch, that's gone. No one can get it. Don't worry. You can purchase in confidence from our store. But there's no reason to recall the entire category if you're confident that it's not tainted. So the benefits are financial, certainly, but the benefits are also trust and credibility with customers. So very exciting to see what blockchain is doing to drive that. We're very interested in collaborating with our partners on that as we deal with goods movement in supply chain. So those are all trends that are impacting retail. Now let's talk about the generations. You can see on the left-hand side the silent generation, a small group of people there, people that were born through 1945, baby boomers, and then Gen X, millennials, Gen Y, and this new alpha gen demographic. I remember in 2014, I think, is when we tipped the scales, and all of a sudden the millennials and the Gen X's outnumbered the baby boomers. Now, what's interesting from a retail perspective is that baby boomers behave very predictably. They have these things called telephones on the wall, and when it rings, they answer them, right? If you've moved in the last few years, you probably don't have a home phone anymore. We're always using cell phones. But when that phone rings, you pick it up, and if you're like me, and again, I'm dating myself, you have one phone, it's on the kitchen wall, and if you want privacy, you have to go get like a 20-foot cord, walk down the hallway, go into the bathroom, and shut the door, and that gives you privacy for a conversation. But those telephones are unique to that generation, and they offer a wonderful way to get in touch with that consumer. They respond well to promotions. If they buy something at the store that's not working properly, they get the 800 number from the bottom of the receipt, make a telephone call, file a complaint, and resolve that. Gen X, millennials, Gen Y, Gen Z, nothing of that behavior applies. So this is a changing dynamic. It's an incredibly changing impact on the behavior of retail. Let's see how that manifests. In the past, we would advertise, cast a wide net, advertise a product. Somebody would make a purchase. We would start tracking that for loyalty. Pretty simple. Now, I know this is a gross simplification of a standard process, but you compare that to what's happening today, and there's discovery. How is the consumer finding out about our products? Or how are we finding out about the consumers? And then there's the research. People are leveraging the internet to do an A/B comparison and find out, what am I planning to buy? Is that the right thing to do? Is there a collaboration going on online where I could determine that that's the right product for me at this point in time in my life? The purchase takes place, we fulfill, and then we start tracking loyalty. A little bit more complex of an environment. As we move to the next, though, you can see it gets much more difficult. We still have discovery, we still have research, but now we have commerce everywhere. Why do I have to go into a store to make that purchase? Why can't I buy it from my mobile? Why can't I tell my proxy to buy it for me? et cetera. So, and then fulfillment, engagement, and then personalization. I really like the bullseye on the top up there because that represents a market of one. When we look at our consumers, they're sharing information. If I'm sharing information like tweets and clicks and likes and LinkedIn, Instagrams, et cetera, and the retailers have access to that, they owe it to themselves to listen. Because I, as a consumer, expect them to know about me, and all the other consumers want that as well. Personalization is absolutely a critical requirement for engaging with consumers. Okay, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But that's right there at the top. The market of one is available, and it's up to the consumer to divulge how much they want to share. But once they do that, their expectation is that we're going to understand that and respond to it appropriately. So those are the major trends that are impacting retail. If we start thinking about what the analysts are saying, surprisingly enough, or not surprisingly enough, we see the same type of thing. Successful companies are customer-driven. In the past, what were successful companies? They were product-driven. So here you can see a study by Forrester talking about how value comes from the customer and not from the products they carry. And customers demand the personal experience, that market of one we just discussed. You can see a quote from Mark at Walgreens talking about how customers are looking for personalization, and that's what's driving them for their Walgreens shoppers to be very focused on customer. And at the bottom, technology is the best way to enable this. What technology? We start to figure out what that is, but especially AI is the only way to deliver value for the customer, from Brian Gill at Nordstrom. Technology is going to drive the success here, providing personal experience in a customer-driven world. The other thing we need to deliver is an easy experience. The more barriers we put in the consumer's way is only a detriment to our success and revenue and margin. Customers need to have an easy-to-get location, an easy-to-navigate store or website, especially when it comes to recommendation logic. If someone's looking for something, what's the upsell opportunity? All of a sudden, you have a customer online who's ready to make a purchase. What goes along with that? That shouldn't just be past sales and Halo basket information. That needs to be knowing about them. I see you're looking for a green shirt, and you're in Wisconsin, and it's winter. I think they're probably going on vacation, because generally you don't wear short-sleeve shirts in winter in Wisconsin. But knowing that information and finding out about that information helps us make the right recommendations. So finding the right product, getting the right recommendation, navigating the store, and then being able to pay, right? I think we've seen the evolution there. Being able to pay with a phone, with Google Pay or Apple Pay, or even more cool, and I don't have one, unfortunately, the Apple Watch, where you can just swipe your watch and you've paid and off you go. Wonderful ease of transaction there. But retailers need to be great in two and good in the other two. Discounting, luxury or rarity, custom product, and getting something special and making that easy. So we're seeing consensus here. The other major force driving retail is wastage. I was surprised at this statistic. You can see it in the middle there. One garbage truck of clothing is burned or disposed of every second. That's every second. There goes another one. There goes another one. Talk about waste. There's an opportunity to mitigate this with proper forecasting, proper replenishment, proper planning, which are all the things that JDA gets excited about working with customers on, to mitigate that risk of every year a third of the world's food going to waste. Incredible opportunity to optimize and become autonomous. The middle point there, inventory, right? By not having the proper stock levels, it's causing grocery retailers about $300 billion a year. Right? That's a major impact that we can mitigate and improve upon. And then efficiency. Using some of these technologies like we've spoken about, IoT and retail, we can have an impact of 1.2 trillion over the next few years. Think about that. The cost of logistics grew by 11% in just last year alone, 2018. So we see huge opportunities here to have impact on the world and on the retailer and on the consumer. Labor is another big thing. It's so hard to find the right associates. And once we find the right associates, we want to make sure they're used appropriately and not overburdened. We've got a very large customer with a gig-like mentality. They run coffee shops all over the world. And if you're a barista there, you work your shift. And if you're going to take a vacation, you can get work where you're going to be on vacation. Let's say you work in Seattle and you're going to go to Vegas for the weekend. Why not pick up a shift? If everybody's going to go golfing and you're not a golfer, they could pick up a shift. The technology that we provide to this coffee chain allows their associates to provide this gig mentality and say, you know what, I'm going on a vacation, I want to pick up some work here, and I'm going to do that through the app. Wonderful way to keep satisfaction in the associates, to keep those associates engaged, and manage that tightening labor market that's impacting all of us. IoT inventory and execution, talked a little bit about this, points out the convenience stores driving down at the bottom, and then, the store execution is the reason I chose this. Store execution is equal to 3.7%, making an impact there with stock replenishment, huge opportunity. So with those analyst findings supporting us, what are we to do in retail? Well, I'm introducing the concept of autonomous retail here, and there's a few ways to get there. First, we need to have visibility. We need to have accurate reporting and analytics on what's going on in the supply chain, what's going on in the store, what's going on in consumer demand. Visibility helps us see, clearly, right? That's the obvious statement of the day. Write it down. Visibility helps us see. But the next step, though, is now that we know what's going on, we can become predictive. Knowing what we've done in the past, seeing what the challenges are, what the bottlenecks are, we can start to predict an out of stock or an empty shelf somewhere. And of course, once we can predict that, then we can prescribe a solution. And doing that with machine learning, we can do that with a level of confidence. Once we have enough decisions made that are over that confidence level threshold, we can allow the system to do them automatically, and bingo, we have achieved autonomy. All of a sudden, we as humans start managing by exception. We can get out of the way, let the system run as it's intended to do, and we focus on the important things like customers, right? So it's an incredible opportunity as we work our way up to a self-learning and self-tuning retail experience. Evidence of autonomy in retail is going to be seen with designs reviewed virtually, being able to understand what's coming down the pike and what are we going to deliver in our next assortment. Optimization of pricing to meet business strategies. Are we going to be an everyday low-cost vendor? Are we going to be a special with promotions? What's our strategy for pricing and how can we leverage that? And then automated robotic warehouse. How can we optimize that to improve on goods movement? And robotics continually checking and ordering inventory while moving stock around the store, right? There's a lot of busy work that can be done automatically that we as humans don't need to worry with. And once we trust the system, again, we can get focused on more important things like working with customers. Re-optimized assortment, right? How often have you ever gone to a store to say, I came here for this item and now it's not available. You've lost me. I'm not getting the rest of my basket. I'm not coming back for this item anymore. It's a great opportunity to improve that, and it all boils down to having the product in the store when the customer expects it. AI-driven demand and replenishment optimizations. We've mentioned this many times, but understanding trends and features and variables and drivers for this environment are critical in making the right decisions to assort, to replenish, and to maintain items on stock. Autonomous deliveries, and then, of course, exposing through apps. And I like the tagline at the bottom, humans and machines need to work collaboratively. Computers were made for one reason, to make our lives easier, not the other way around. And we can take that the next step and make sure that consumers' lives are easier as well. So the concept comes out around the anywhere shelf. Now, this is similar to endless aisle or other terminology you've probably heard of. Today, if you think about a natural home, generally when you're going out and buying hard lines, soft lines, and grocery, you probably are doing about 57% of hard lines. If you get a big bulky TV, have them ship that. We don't want to load it in the minivan. We don't want to cart it home, right? Have them ship that. Or soft lines, right? If you're going to go buy a sweater, a jacket, some pants, generally you want to go see that. You want to feel it. You want to experience it. Pick it up in the store, right? Soft lines. And grocery, we're seeing 28% on average of people using third-party services. Notice the metrics change drastically in the next 2 years. For hard lines, we go from 57% to 79%. This is from a study that we did at JDA. And over the next 24 months, we see people plan to ship from store at a much higher level, pick up in store at a much higher level, and use a third-party service for delivery. So whether the retailers are ready or not, this is coming. Consumers are going to be demanding this level of service. So with an anywhere shelf idea, it makes a lot of sense. However, most retailers are not configured to support this. 55% say they don't have a single view of their inventory across channels. They have a DC for their stores. They may have a pocket of a DC for their online, but they don't have a single view of that inventory, and that's critical. They've got to be able to see inventory across channels. And for that matter, they need to have a real-time view of inventory. absolutely where is this item? And are we tracking that with IoT? Are we tracking that with RFID? What's our carrier network look like? How are we identifying where items are? We need to have that real-time single view of inventory. And many organizations, half of them, 50%, feel they do not have the right platforms and tools to support this. Now, what's interesting about my background, I've seen big, heavyweight systems go into organizations. ERP systems take a long time to deploy. When we start talking to customers about a WMS system, a warehouse management, or a transportation system, or a demand or fulfill or replenishment, or labor, workforce, it's much more tactical. We can deploy that very quickly and get instant value and then leverage that to move forward. So talking to customers about their ability to support their supply chain needs, it's a much easier conversation to say, deploy this, move on, deploy that, move on, and get continually returning value. So it's a very exciting time to be working with customers to enable some of these components. So the other thing I wanted to share is that when we talk about what autonomous retail represents and those factors we just reviewed that provide autonomous retail, how do you do that? You need an autonomous supply chain, which is really where we come into play. We start thinking about what can we do from autonomy in a supply chain, and that enables autonomy in the business process. In this case, it's retail or manufacturing. Notice the similar things I just showed you in the bar graphs, but now we're going through visibility, predictive, prescriptive, and autonomous with the maps. It's a brilliant metaphor. Remember the old days, the big paper maps? You pull them out of your glove box and unfold them on the trunk, right? And you can see exactly where you are, where you're going to go. And it's a great way to understand what's the lay of the land, where do I need to go next. GPS came out, and this was predictive, all right? We went from maps to a GPS, and it just took that virtual concept of a map, put it on a screen, we could mount it on the dashboard, and we know exactly where to go, where to turn, where to stop, things of that nature. But then you add weather, and you start to add variables that we didn't have in the early days, and now we have the concept of Google Maps saying, okay, yeah, you're supposed to go here, but there's a big construction pile up there. We know from the feedback on the traffic feed that that's not the right way, so we're going to route you around some back streets. Now we've become prescriptive, knowing what we need to know to make decisions to mitigate the risk of what they were predicting we had to do. And of course, once that's all systemized and available, we can take that and make it truly autonomous, where the car will drive us. We're not quite there where we can take a nap yet, but you look at what some of the big automotive companies are doing, and it's incredible how the autonomous operation is coming along. It really is a major impact. So we call this our moonshot. We see autonomous retail and autonomous supply chain as a moonshot. It's well within reach, but the collaboration that we go through as we work with customers is critical in identifying what are they working with, what's their urgent goals to achieve from a board level, artificial intelligence, machine learning, et cetera, and what do they have to work with? What's their team like? What's their system like? What's their landscape like? What's their platform like? How can we work together to drive towards that goal? And it's served to be a wonderful metaphor. We're pleased to see customers leveraging these skill sets and achieving their own moonshots of being able to do targeted promotions for customers. So I share that with you as an interesting way to visualize where we're headed and what the moonshot is. So if we think about supply chain planning then, making this autonomous, there's 5 guiding principles. Let the machine do the work. Once we have trust and credibility in the machine, let's let the machine do the work and get out of the way. We still have auditability. We know we can diagnose why that decision was made and what the impact is of that decision, but we can let the machine do the job, and then we truly manage by exception, right? We automate inputs to demand and supply, we streamline order management, and we elevate exceptions. That gets us away from many manual steps. We see supply chain as one of the last great frontiers. Order processing has been automated, supply chain is still coming, CRM has been automated, but we see supply chain as kind of the last great frontier. There's a lot of manual work in managing trucks and carriers and warehouses, and we see incredible opportunity there. The second item is to infuse advanced analytics. We run reports, we use Excel, right? We use PowerPoint, we use a lot of great tools to run reports, but those need to be actionable. What do we do when we get the report? When we deliver a report to our superior, what do they do with it, right? Let's take that next action. Let's infuse that intelligence into the report to say, oh, you just asked for a list of out of stocks in Dubuque, right? What are you going to do in Dubuque? You're going to maybe reach over to Peoria and route something to fulfill that need. there's ways to embed AI and machine learning and intelligence into those advanced analytics. And the concept of a sales and operational planning, S&OP, or integrated business planning, traditionally these have been tasks that run on a monthly basis or a weekly basis, sometimes daily, with lots of data review and lots of discussion. Why can't we take that and action it? Let's streamline that and make a cadence that's replaced with short, tactical, and cross-functional touch points. And then, of course, hardwiring into the business. Many supply chain executives make decisions for their supply chain, and they tend to do that in a vacuum. We see an opportunity to blend that across the ecosystem, blend that across the enterprise, and deliver this as KPIs that impact the entire organization. And then, of course, build organizational capability to evolve. If we're thinking about the consumer first and not the product, if we're thinking about assortments that make sense for our local demand, we have the ability to build organizational teams to support that. And then we see autonomous retailers focusing in 4 key areas: customer centricity, technology, organization, and selling. Technology, as we said before, the quote from Bill at Nordstrom, technology is a differentiator and can absolutely have an impact in how they manage their supply chain to become an autonomous retailer. Creating innovation labs, partnering with technology leaders, increasing R&D spend, engaging in more of a DevOps, a rapid Scrum type sprint session rather than the traditional waterfall development can greatly accelerate the use of technology. The organization, connecting systems, removing silos, improving the ability of cross-functional teams, investing in the right people, again with the concept of agile development. And then customer centricity. Who is the representative for the customer in the organization? How are we making sure that we have the concept of a chief customer office? How are we thinking in terms of the customer? Many retailers go out and do a store tour, but do they really pull the consumers aside and see how the experience is going? It's a great opportunity to get closer to the customer and understand what's driving their loyalty or their lack thereof. Create 360 view of customers. I shared this with the data model or the big data lake concept in the past. We helped a customer build a data lake that provided a 360-degree view of a customer. They called it their golden customer record. And they did that without a loyalty program. They were able to look at sales history, social media, and a number of other environmental factors that allow them to say, we don't know this person's name, but we know their credit card comes in every Thursday to buy gardening supplies. Right? That's a profile. That's a view of a customer that can help make decisions on assortment and replenishment. And of course, selling. Developing in-store experience. Once we have automated the back office processes, let's funnel that resource into consumer-facing associates. Again, think back to Main Street. We want consumers to come in and have a warm, comfortable, very highly credible experience, and taking all the savings and pumping that into customer-facing associates can have a huge impact. So thinking about autonomous channel, what's next? We think channels will cease to exist. You won't have omni-channel, you won't have unified channel, you just have retail. People will buy online, they'll buy in store, they'll buy via proxy, they'll just purchase and their information will show up. Channels won't be as important in the future. Stores will focus on delivering experiences. This is exciting. We talked about the ski trip. That's a great example, but there's many others. You know, being able to fix a carburetor the right way. I know there's not many carburetors anymore. But still, you know, being able to do something that's enriched in augmented reality, you know, that's exciting, and there's an experience that really appeals to the new generation. And there will be stores that solely process returns. It could be a cross-banner store that represents return opportunities for everybody. If you look what Amazon did with their lockers, right? I mean, there's a lot of young professionals who don't trust packages to be left on their front porch. Right? The locker concept was absolutely brilliant and allows people to say, I ordered something, it's going to be delivered whenever it's going to be delivered, and I'm not there usually to pick it up. So send it to the locker. Now, in my opinion, there's a great opportunity to turn that around and say, I want it delivered on Friday between 4 and 6. That's coming too, but this is a great opportunity to manage deliveries and returns. We feel planning activities will be automated. We know enough about sales history. We know enough about customer demand. We can calculate demand, forecast, and we feel we can automate that to the tune of about 80%, allowing us to manage by exception. The blurring line between consumer products and retail, right? We've got retailers with very large private label manufacturing. doing their own manufacturing and distribution. We have consumer products companies with direct-to-consumer channels. You know, you can go online and buy direct from the manufacturer now. That blurring of the line is going to drive automatic replenishment. There's going to be great synergies between those two components that'll drive 40% of the sales in some verticals. And of course, we'll interact with these robots. We don't have to if we don't want to. There's still people to talk to, but there will be more opportunities to work with robotics and machines in certain situations where it makes sense, right? We've all done the IVR call when you call customer service and punch a bunch of buttons to get through the phone tree. There will be some of that for very, very straightforward interactions. We will see more specialized retailers. Again, think about Main Street. We're moving back into, I know my neighborhood, I know my category, I am providing a best-of-breed experience, and we'll see some of those come along. And organizations will be structured across functions, rather than having, here's my supply chain, here's my customer loyalty, here's my accounting, here's my legal, here's my operations. We're going to start seeing cross-functional groups providing impact to the organization. We do think if you don't have a data or an AI strategy, it's going to be very challenging to stay in business. Board members are asking, what's your AI strategy, as they deal with C-level executives. That's a board conversation. What's your AI strategy? A while ago, it was, what's your data strategy? Now it's, what's your AI strategy? How are you leveraging this new generation of technology to make an impact on the future of this organization? Data and AI strategy is going to become table stakes. What are we doing to optimize and automate and streamline the efficiencies? And shopping will be tailored and curated to enable, and I would add the word, individual customers to shop as they want. Again, it's the market of one. If I'm sharing all of my data, we owe it to ourselves as retailers to collect that data, consume that data, and tally that in a way that will drive an impact. That's what we feel is next. And if we start thinking about what's next after next, which I love the tagline for this environment. This has been a great project that we've been part of coming up to the Tech Summit. What's next after next? We see today robotics, we see chatbots, we see GPS and tracking, and we see RFID. In the future, we see smart equipment. It's not just RFID and beacons. It's a smart device. Maybe it's a vending machine with tracking so you can swipe your card, open like it's your fridge, pull whatever you want out, and it charges you automatically. Smart equipment will drive that. Autonomous transportation, including drones, is already here. That will continue to expand. Communication is pervasive. It's going to continue to have an impact. And then in-store robotics and IoT, right? You're going to start seeing more of these little devices. This is the Lobot by a company called Fellow Systems on the right. You're going to see more of those guys driving around the hallways, checking scans, checking planograms, and then answering questions for a consumer when they want to be guided along a waypoint to what they're looking for. So we see that for technology. We see customer experience evolving. Right now we've got AI, we've got magic mirrors, we've got beacons, and we've got payment technologies. That's going to evolve into autonomous shopping. Anybody been in an Amazon Go store? Right? This technology is real. You can do it. You can walk in, you can just scan your phone, pick up what you want, and walk out. It's evolving. In addition to the Amazon Go experience, there's the Walmart experience in the Northeast, and then there's a number of other partners who are building this technology for everybody else. So it is absolutely going to come along. 3D printing is going to take off in certain niche areas. I see this in spare parts and electronics. If you need a battery housing because your cell phone's no longer working, you can actually have that printed on site. That'll come along. We'll see 3D printing evolve. And then, of course, like I mentioned, augmented and virtual reality. Augmented reality is here today. It's very cool. That'll be more and more available as we move our way forward. Virtual reality, we've got to figure out the bulkiness of the goggles, right? That's a bit of a barrier right now. But it's streamlined once you're in it, and it's just mind-changing, right? If you've experienced it, it really is disorienting if you haven't been comfortable with it in the start. That will take off, and I see that first in experiential shopping experiences. And then try before you buy. Interesting way to conduct transactions. Trying something out and having a grace period before your credit cards hit. We see trying before you buy coming along as well. And improved predictability. Big data is here, right? Data has been created to the tune of exabytes a year. In fact, I think it was Ginny Rometty from IBM a couple years ago said 80% of the data that exists has been created in the last 18 months. You look at that hockey stick of data creation, and it's hard to argue. It's just coming from everywhere, and it's got value. The value is identifying the key elements of the data from the noise, but there's great opportunity in harvesting that big data. New technologies for accuracy, Excel. I love the fact we still got Excel up there. As much as we try not to use it, Excel still runs the world in some corners. New BI and analytical tools. I see a lot of opportunity to improve that, like I said earlier, and make it actionable. How do we make these reports actionable? And we see this with machine learning and deep learning will continue to evolve and improve and drive assortments and pricing and goods location. Connectivity, I spoke already about the microwave and the fridge and the washer and the dryer and the car. Things are communicating with each other, and there will be smart traps to say, hey, something happened over here you need to know, and I'm going to surface that on your television screen or your mobile device. Connectivity is going to take off. Smart clothing is really interesting for those concerned with health issues. What's my pulse? What's my blood pressure? How do I need to be worried about breathing? You know, there's a lot of opportunity to leverage smart clothing, certainly for health, as well as for sensing when something's a concern. I need to react to it. And of course, crowdsourcing, collecting all this information and making a decision. So with that in mind, we talk about the fulfillment challenges and supply chain challenges, and we see that balancing the consumer-facing with the back-end technology has real opportunities. We want to be able to navigate operational complexity, race for proximity, balance the speed and cost to serve, need to run in real time, and break down silos and overcome legacy systems, policies, and procedures. And again, at JDA, we're really excited about working with customers and how what's next after next can drive that. What we see happening is improvements in all these areas: inventory, margin, personalization, speed to market, reducing waste, improving efficiency and productivity and costs. And you can see on the left-hand side the areas that we're focusing on, from machine learning algorithms to sensors and beacons and telemetry to the right recommendation and right forecasting opportunities to get consumer-driven assortments at the right place at the right time. So we truly are recreating that Main Street experience. When I go in, I know exactly what I want. The proprietary knows what I need next, and it becomes a great opportunity to transact in a way that makes a lot of sense. So with that in mind, what we've done is we've explored technology drivers, we've listened to a few analysts, and we've figured out what comes next after next. And with a few minutes left, we can take questions or have more conversation about this. Any questions? Yes? Yes.
And technology is providing me with that choice, right? Will that happen?
Yeah, the question was, will this cause, if I say this the right way, will this cause less of a choice for a consumer? If they buy the same thing over and over again, technology is kind of driving us down that path. Will it cause a lower assortment choice? I don't think so, but it raises a good point. The concept of a halo effect when you're online. You know, most of the standard search tools and the browsers will tailor the content to meet your specific needs. I watched a great TED Talk once where they said, it's kind of like eating your internet dessert without eating your internet vegetables. You need to hear everything online. Just like your question, if I only buy the same thing over and over again, will ever be proposed alternatives to that? And I think the answer is yes. I think we owe it to ourselves as we're building systems and driving assortments for consumers. We know what the choice is. But then we offer comparisons, right? And that's where the collaborative buy comes in too. If I see a lot of chatter about, oh, I usually buy this product, but there's a lot of people talking about that, what's going on? Maybe there's an issue, maybe people don't want to buy it anymore for whatever reason, a quality issue or a price issue. Not only does the consumer need to know that, but the retailer needs to know that as well, because that's your first source of complaints. We don't have that customer call center anymore where people call and see something's wrong. They tweet, they communicate, they chat with others about that. So excellent point. I don't think it's going to cause reduced assortment. I think it's going to cause awareness of other options. With that said, we could just keep going the same path without even worrying about it. That's up to us to make sure we keep our eyes open though.
Because for things that we buy that we're not so sure of, we are driven by reviews, right?
Sure.
So it's how many reviews and how many stars do I see on this item? That means that a majority of the people are drawn towards that, and some other So maybe those companies follow.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely, it raises a few interesting points. I think we are consensus buyers. And just as we're evaluating consensus about products, when you get something you know you like for days gone by, we go back and we get that product. You know, when you go to your favorite restaurant, I don't know if you're like me, I get the same thing. I look at the menu, my wife makes fun of me, she says, I know what you're gonna get. We get what we want, right? But there's an opportunity to expand our horizons, and the consensus, the collaboration is a great opportunity for us to expand our horizons as well. And quite frankly, that's an opportunity for us to do some targeted promotions. If we see that one item is driving a category, let's analyze the rest of the items. Is there something we can do to put a halo effect on that? Is there something we can do to promote, work with the upstream supply side to push things and help them from a marketing perspective? Yeah. Any other questions? Yes?
I think the last slide, we had kind of like the barriers or like what we need to overcome.
Yeah.
Like where companies kind of are stuck in the old model or these like ingrained kind of systems.
Yeah.
And I was just wondering, like, when y'all are going into companies, what's kind of the split between companies that are like, yeah, like we want the new, bring it, and you run into these people that are like, oh, but it's always been done this way.
Yes, yes. Question was, what do we see when we go out and talk to customers who have existing legacy products or existing legacy decisions that they make? I think Dr. Feint did a nice job of highlighting that this morning. We worked with a grocer in Germany where they had 7.5% stockout situations. We built an algorithm which brought it down to 0.5%, but they weren't ready to let go yet. They were overriding the algorithm to say, we know better than the system. It needs to be here. They got benefits. They got 5% stockouts, which was down 2.5 points, which is good. But once we took their hand off the wheel, the algorithms took over. We see that with organizations. There's a lot of legacy that we work with. This is not an implementation, this is a transformation for many organizations. And they need to realize we're making an investment for this reason. And sharing the outcomes is a big way to mitigate that risk. Sharing the outcomes to say, when we're done, we should expect to see improvements in these KPIs. We should expect to see reduced waste, improved accuracy, fewer stockouts, identifiable market drivers, and then the best thing I've seen in software transformation is publishing those metrics as you work your way through it. So yeah, we do see that from time to time, and there is a tendency to say, we've always done it this way, and this is the way we're gonna do it forever and ever. But change happens, and technology is here, and some of the drivers we talked about here today are an effective way to make a compelling argument for that. Okay, question over here?
So, a lot of them you've heard this week expand on technology driving. What is your guys' philosophy on security? Because you have to make sure that you're a trusted
Yes.
entity.
Yeah. A question is, what's our approach towards security? In addition to just technology, but to security. Our assumption is that it's critical. We assume there's a security governance protocol already in place. We have to abide by that. More and more of our customers are going to cloud, right? In fact, everything we did just in the last quarter is going to cloud. So we're seeing more and more cloud consumption, more and more cloud operation. You start thinking about whatever vulnerabilities there may be, making sure those are locked down and protected. Very important to us. We just hired a Chief Information Security Officer, a CISO, in the last year, and that's impacting our delivery of product to customers. So we assume there is a security protocol already in place at our customers. If they don't have one, we recommend one, and we assume we have to work in conjunction with that. Yeah? Yes? Yeah.
How do you balance that? Hey, I want you to personalize experience, but I know you don't be sharing all your personal data.
The question is, how do you deal with a consumer's privacy by using data to create a personalized experience? That's a tricky question, and a number of years ago, a big well-known retailer got kind of their wrist slapped for watching consumer behavior and reacting to it without advertising the fact that they were on camera. Most consumers know that there's some sort of observation taking place. Most people know that when you're in public, you're subject to be videoed. The question is, how do you collect information and use it intelligently without introducing the concept of the creepy factor. If I walk in and someone says, "Oh, Mr. Thorsen, I see you're back. Do you want your normal order?" I'm like, "Whoa, I never gave you permission to do that." But I like to say, let's take it from the creepy factor to the comfort factor. Used properly and obtained legally, it can be a very comfortable experience. Customers need to know what's out there. You can do this in your social media sites. You can see what's been exposed on your behalf, so people need to do that. Organizations need to be clear on what they're doing with that so they can create a comfortable market of one, and be ready to back off if it's not suitable, right? But there is an assumption of public environment, and there is monitoring that takes place. The question a responsible retailer needs to take, or the decision a responsible retailer needs to make, is how to use that properly so it's a comfortable environment. It's maybe a suggestion rather than a prescription, if that makes sense. Yes?
So technology is largely that market. There's a lot of trends. 3D TVs, for example, they don't catch on before something over engineers past that. So a lot of the technologies they mentioned, specifically like VR, you mentioned bulkiness, the price of entry is still very high. Is there any cautions that you give on any of the technologies that you mentioned without some kind of devil's advocate argument for some of these pieces of tech? As caution to retailers to say, hold off?
So counsel for a retailer for not quite embracing a new version of technology or something? Where we focus is on the back office. We see an opportunity to optimize and improve the supply chain. Retailers take that and do with it what they need to support their business objectives. Is it greater assortments? Is it better pricing? Is it more customer intimacy? Whatever that happens to be, our job is to make sure the right product's in the right place at the right time at the right price. Thinking about the different technology trends we saw today, there really isn't one I would hesitate to recommend if a customer wants to achieve that objective, right? If you want to create, let's take that VR concept, which, to your point, very high barrier to entry, very high cost to get into that. But yet, if that's part of that brand promise, if that's an experiential retailer or a retailer who wants to become experiential, that makes a lot more sense, and they can package that in with opportunities. I think all the things we spoke about today are at least on some level of maturity already with many of these retailers. It really boils down to what that brand promise is and what their commitment is to the marketplace. Yes?
So I hear a lot about back office, I hear a lot about the consumer, but I don't hear a lot in machine learning about the subject matter expert of the associate that's in the store that is interacting with the consumer.
The consumer.
Interacting with back office.
Mm-hmm.
And is that middleman. Where are you seeing a good feedback loop with the associates able to give back office and customer feedback to both sides of the chain? Do you see any function that's working really well right now?
Yeah, the question is, what do we do with the customer-facing associate? We talk about consumer loyalty, we talk about back office optimization. How do we bridge that gap? I shared this story about our coffee chain customer. That's really more of a convenience for the associate to provide that gig mentality, the optimization of their work schedule. When it comes to actually engaging with the consumer, I have seen some evidence where a loyalty program was deployed at a mid-market department store in the Midwest, and they already had walkies between the associates. And anytime someone who came through the door was on the loyalty program, there was a little chime that went off. That's an example of signaling to the associates that's comfortable. It's like, oh, nice to see you again. If you know their name and for your friend, obviously that makes a lot more sense. But it's a cue, it's an assist that can help improve that commitment they have to consumer environment. I'll be honest with you, there's a lot of work to do there. When it comes to customer-facing associates there's a lot of churn, right? Especially in the seasons, in the high shopping seasons. There's a lot of churn, so there's a limited amount of ability to put technology into that role until we achieve the goals that the banner is striving for or the brand is striving for. There's interesting technologies that can help there. The beacons can help too. There's a couple of retailers that put beacons in the models, in the dummies, so you can go up and learn all about what the assortment is on that mannequin. But yeah, there's room to explore different opportunities there. And it all boils down to what are we doing to improve the comfort of that consumer and then to drive towards more of a relationship. It's faster adoption in the high-end luxury fashion. Obviously, you get down to the convenience drugstore discount side, and there's less of an investment there. But the high end, and that opens the door to clienteling as well. When you have a device that gives you access to everything on the system, clienteling is where we can come and we can work together and design a ring or create an outfit or something like that. Okay. All right. Any other question? Okay, I'm getting this side. One more question, and then we're going to be done. Yes. Say again, modified what?
Modified consumer journey, I think that's what
Ah.
you see so many different models today.
Yeah.
And you added timers everywhere. The model that I saw, it's the first time that I've seen that.
Yeah.
Which almost says that there's an evaluation and discovery process for consumers as they're evaluating commerce. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I remember that. That's that blue circle where we talk about commerce everywhere. We're going to see more evidence of that, I think, going forward. Right now, you can identify transactions. They're pretty straightforward. You're either at a register or you're at a client. We just talked about clienteling. I didn't introduce that earlier in the session, but you could be at a kiosk or you can be somewhere with connectivity. The proxies are a big part of that as well. I do think that we're going to see that evolve to where we've given our trust to a transaction on our behalf. Kind of like when you see those pods that the big guys in Seattle did. Just push this button, you keep it by your tide, and you want another thing, you just push it, off it goes. It'll be, how should I say this? It'll be a more pervasive access to the transaction, I think. Rather than a formal walk up to the register and transact, I think there'll be thinner, more widespread access points to the transaction. But we have the trust. We have the ability as a consumer to say, yes, you are allowed to charge my card when I give you this instruction, I signal this way. Yeah, commerce everywhere is it's a fuzzy term, but that's where it's really going to have an impact on wider access to transactions. Okay, all right. Well, I want to thank you very much for your time. Enjoy the rest of the show, and appreciate it.